Okay, where's he at? Right here.
Where are you posting this?
I don't know. It's just
On
here.
his YouTube page.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Also, subscribers.
Okay, so here's Mr. Evan Newman. Let me give you guys some accolades of this stud here. So I've had the pleasure of working with Evan. He's gifted to us throughout the school year at Lawrence when he was one of the best pianists in the Midwest, piano players. So he's in town now for a couple days and has some ties to Lawrence, and of course, come back in. You know what's cool is once you're a Cutco stud, it's always fun to give back and connect with other great friends in the business. So Evan's awesome. He started in May 2012. He sold 440,000 so far. Yeah, I know, 440,000. Basically working summers, and he's finishing his master's at the University of Michigan right now. His average order, as I texted you guys like 3 times, $800 and a 90% closing ratio. So how cool would that be to go do 10 demos, 9 sales, and sell like, what is that, 7,200? Something like that? That's a lot. That's good. He's had tons of big pushes, a 20K push or 25K push. Earned company trips to Prague and Costa Rica. He's run a branch before. Sold 50 grand this summer. And on pace for his biggest year, somewhere between 90 and 100 grand as a full-time student. So, I asked him since he's in town. It's very nice to bless us with his presence of just giving us some goods for like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes on increasing your average order and your belief and going big, and then some question and answer. So, thank you for your time, sir.
Sure.
All right.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
So everyone got some like notes and stuff?
Cool. We like notes.
Of course.
Okay. So, pre-handling objections. When people don't sell on appointments, it's amazing to me how often it's because of this.
Because of the cell phone?
Yeah, go ahead. Whatever gets it down.
Yeah.
So pre-handling objections. This is for the people who in the middle of your presentation or even before the presentation starts is like you can tell they're super close-minded and like you're walking into a situation where you're like, oh no. This isn't going to end well, or they say stuff like, well, I use one knife for blah, 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 or they say, like, oh, I heard it's really expensive, or whatever they're saying, like, in the beginning of the presentation, that's basically their way of saying, here's why I'm not going to buy Cutco from you today. So this is how you, like, basically take care of that, which is, like, handle it in advance so it doesn't come up at the end, because if they go through the entire presentation saying things like, I use one knife, or Cutco's expensive, or blah, 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 what do you think's going to happen when you ask them for the order? The same thing's going to come up, right? They're going to go, like, I use one knife for everything. It's like, it's your fault that they're saying it at the end, because that means you just didn't handle it appropriately when it came up the first time. So if they say, I use one knife, or whatever it is, I always say the same exact thing verbatim to that customer, which is, Mrs. Jones, that's awesome. Some of my best customers used to whatever the hell they just said to you. Mrs. Jones, that's awesome. Some of my best customers used to insert here. Which is true. Like, some of our best customers, like, we have as a company 20 million plus customers estimated, right? And out of those 20 million, there are a lot of people that fall into that category of, I used to use one knife for everything, or, like, Chicago cutlery is the best, or whatever. It's just, like, whatever, because, for me at this point, it's like being in fairs and shows, like, you hear everything, and you hear it all the time, because you get a lot of people walking up and saying things. So if they think Chicago is the best, it's like, oh, Mrs. Jones, like, I had so many customers that used to think Chicago was the best. I'm going to tell you why today, like, they ended up going with Cutco. And by the end, I hope it makes sense, right? So you're acknowledging what they're saying, but you're basically just kind of saying, like, that's what other people thought, but you're gonna see why that's, like, not exactly true, or not, whatever. So in other words, you can't let them really get away with their kind of BS of, like, why their situation is so great with their knives, because they don't really know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's either you handle it now, or you lose the set sale, or you lose the wholesale. Like, you could lose the wholesale depending on what it is that they're saying to you. Because if they use just one knife, and they're, like, okay with it, and it works fine or whatever, they're not going to understand the value of that one knife that's, like, 70 or however much money that it is.
Yeah.
like whether it's the trimmer or whatever. Like in a lot of cases, they're gonna be like, oh, it's just too expensive, and then that's a no sale. Like it just doesn't translate. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind when people aren't selling a lot is pre-handling objections. And then the second thing, which I think is more important, is quality questions. If you're asking customers good questions, you can ask them as many as you want to. Like this is the one part where it's like follow the script. Yes, it's important, but when it comes to question asking, you can completely go off books there. As long as they're good questions, they can't be like, "What's your favorite color?" I mean, that's a little dumb and useless, right? It's got to be like, "Hey, Mrs. Jones, like, do you enjoy cooking, or is it just like completely obligatory?" Or, "Hey, Mrs. Jones, like, are you the person that hand washes all the knives, or are you more like me and like a little bit lazy with it?" Which obviously, as you can see, you got to build some like rapport before you ask things like this. But you're getting to know them, and they feel a connection with you when you're asking them questions. That's how daily interaction works. It's not just sales. Like when people are asking you questions, like you feel appreciated and understood when you're answering their questions because they're taking a genuine interest in you. And if they do that, if you take a genuine interest in your customer, they have a lot easier time taking genuine interest in you and why you're here and why you're selling and what you're saying and how much the prices are and how you're asking and like how you close. Like it's no longer like this pressure situation. It's like it's a person to person, like everyday communication, and it's super casual. Like when I get to the point where I close, I'm just like, "Hey, Mrs. Jones, so would that be something you'd like to do?" It's not like this big huge thing. Like people get asked all the time to buy things. Whether it's, and it's usually in this day and age, not from salespeople, it's like ads. They're bombarded with ads. Impersonal, annoying things that pop up in their life. And in this case, they have an actual person who's taking actual time to meet with them and talk with them and get to know them. It's a cool experience, or at least it should be for the customer. Because if it's not a cool experience for the customer, it's like, why are you there? Like, you are there, and I firmly believe this, like, because Cutco, I think, makes everybody's lives better, it makes their lives easier, and it saves them money over the long haul. So by being in their house and meeting with them, I should be doing them a service by me meeting with them. No matter who it is. I'm not wasting their time. Like, I am in there doing a service to them, regardless of whether or not they buy a trimmer or they buy everything. Or they can't, like, for whatever reason, they just can't afford anything or whatever, and they met with me, and we got to know each other, and we built a connection, and even if I never see them again, they had fun meeting with me. Okay? So that's basically what it boils down to. So when I'm asking quality questions, like, a lot of times when I think of quality questions, when they come the most useful is when it comes to objection handling. So during the script, obviously there are points when you can ask good questions, and it helps you with your kind of flow of the presentation and making it more personal. But the most crucial point is definitely objections. So when they throw that objection at you, it's like, I want to think about it. Or, that's just too much money. And you obviously handle it, and like whatever's in the manual or whatever you've been taught, for each of us, it's just a little different, but it's all basically the same, which is like, I completely understand what you're saying. Most people feel that way. Like, but what a lot of them did is they just did it on 5Pay, which is only blank today. I mean, just to ask you, like, if you really, really, really wanted to right now, like, could you budget the $254 or however much it is on the site you're asking for? I think that's for the Homemaker Plus 8. Could you budget the $254, or is that just, like, out of the question? Right, so at this point, by asking that question, you're establishing, can they afford it or not? Is it a matter of the price, or is it a matter of what they're willing to pay for what they're getting? Right, so it's a good question. If you really wanted to, could you afford the blank payment right now? It's not an awkward question. Like, you're trying to get to the bottom of it.
So even someone in our shoes, you would find yourself saying that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like, Mrs. Jones, I completely understand. Like, it's definitely a lot of money to be impulsive, and it's certainly not chump change. But, you know, I mean, just to ask you, like, if you really, really wanted to today, I mean, could you fit $254 in the budget, or is that just too high for right now.
Okay. Because what Vern says something similar to that. What he asks is when they say no to a set, he's like, so is it like way too much or is it just like a little too much?
Which is a great question.
So
Yes.
like essentially like that's like asking the same question.
It
but
is.
asking it in a different way.
It is, and it'll depend on who you're working with and how you've worked with them.
Yeah.
But they're both great questions. They're both great questions. You're essentially asking the same thing. You're just trying to get a feel for kind of where they're at.
Yo.
And that's a great question too that Vern asked. Is that way too much or is it just a little too much for like the budget right now? Yeah.
Because I've only had the guts to actually ask that question once.
Which is fine.
Yeah, and I ended up selling a set on it.
That's
awesome.
right.
Yeah.
It's amazing how that works,
Yeah.
right? So like, it's real. So when they kind of tell me, it's like, okay, so like on a scale of 1 to 10, like 10 being I definitely want to get this set today, like here's my credit card, and 1 being just kind of like blowing smoke in my ears, like where are you kind of at with the set right now? And they'll tell you. And a lot of times they'll be like, I'm a 6 or a 7, which is great when they say that, unless you've like, screwed up and given them too good of a price or too good of a deal, which don't do that. Like, you can start at full price first, like, because that's how you leverage it and give a better deal.
Never go back.
You can't go back. No, if you give a crazy stupid deal and like start with like all your cards on the table and they say no, it's over. Like, you can't help them anymore. But if you give them, whatever the price is or whatever like the general sort of deal is, and they say I'm at a 6 or a 7, okay, cool. So, what could I do to get you to like an 8 or a 9? Which is a really cool question because if you're in a demo, they're almost always going to answer that question. If I'm in a fair, they're going to be like, oh, I don't know. And then I kind of like make them answer me using different questions.
Like
But
what?
like when if they say, oh, I don't really know, I'll go, well, just so you know, when most of the time when people say they want to think about it, it's either because the option they're looking at is way too expensive right now, or it's just too big of a package. So which category do you fall in?
Oh.
Like I'm going to make them answer me because if they don't answer me, I can't help them.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm not thinking of it like I'm not thinking of it, well, I don't make the sale. No, it's I can't help you get what you're trying to get if you don't answer my questions.
Yeah.
But if you're in a demo, they're going to answer that question more than likely. If you say on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at with it right now? 10 being here's a credit card, 1 being just like no way. Where are you? I tell you, what can I do to get you to whatever number's higher? Don't say 10. Because that's a commitment. That's a tie down. They're not going to answer your question if you try to get them to do a 10 because they don't want to be at a 10. They want to have the power to decide for themselves. So get them to an 8 or a 9.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right? And if you get them to 8 or a 9, it's already over. Like, you ever had the demo where the husband and the wife are just looking at each other and like, well, what do you think? It's like, you already know it's over.
Yeah. Oh,
It's already over when they look at each other. And they're like, well, what do you think? It's like they already know in their minds that it makes sense. So that's what they're asking each other just to confirm that. Like, that makes sense. So when it came down to like whether the customer's on the fence or not, like when I ran my offices, I always told my reps to like call in, and a few of my reps are always like, okay, well, whatever, I'll just do it on my own, because like most of the time reps couldn't tell how on the fence customers were. I said, if they're on the fence, just call me. If they're on the fence, just call me. If they're on the fence, just call me. Like, and I didn't get calls. I was like, what is going on? Like, there are more people on the fence than what the number of calls that are coming in my inbox right now. Like, what is going on? Reps can't tell when customers are on the fence. Like, sometimes I have a hard time telling if customers are on the fence. So with that, it's just, okay, where was I going with that? Okay, that's what it was. Ask them this question: if I can get you a great deal on a set that fits within your budget, like an option you fell in love with today and you could fit it in the budget, would you consider getting it today?
And at what point during your drop down are you saying that though?
See, that's a good question. You can kind of insert that really anywhere in the presentation.
Okay.
Like in my opinion, it makes more sense as you're dropping down if they say no to the first option you're showing to them. If they're saying no to the homemaker or whatever, it's like, hey, like, and you've established it's already like a no. It's too expensive. They're definitely not going with that option no matter what you say or do. It's like, hey, just to ask you really quick, like, if I could find you an option that you'd be super excited with and it fit in your budget, I mean, would you be open to getting it today? If they say no, like you didn't have a chance when you walked in there. But
Yeah.
most of the time, people are going to say, well, maybe
Yeah.
they
It's
should
always
be
that
getting
maybe.
something. They should be getting something.
Yeah.
So that means that they are open to considering it today. If they say maybe, and if they say yes, then obviously yes. But number 3, and this is kind of what Jason sort of brought me in here, I think, for. Number 3, I think, is the most important thing, which is your belief system over what people should be buying. Right? So, in my opinion, I think everybody should, in a perfect world, have a signature or higher. I mean, think of the set, right? It's the basic pieces, like the everyday tools, like from the 40s, like butcher knife and everything, right? The basic tools that people have been using forever, and the 4, like, most requested, I use this all the time knives. So out of the signature set, you could argue, like, for most people, there are, like, maybe 3 knives in it that they rarely use.
Mm-hmm.
3 out of 24. Right? When you think of, like, a toolbox or anything like that, think of all that crap that nobody uses whatsoever. Like, all those little drill bits and, like, most families and stuff, they hardly use anything that are in those types of things. So why would it not make sense if they're using 90% of the set to not get it? If they can afford it, right? If they can't, find them a different option. But in my mind, it's like this is the set that everybody should have. Okay? And I think it's sort of silly for customers to get less than a homemaker because it's just the basic pieces. And I think it's like ludicrous to get less than a galley because when you think of the pieces in the galley, it's like, what is that? You have your paring knife, which a college student uses. You have your trimmer, which a college student uses. You have the spatula a college student uses. You have a chef's knife college student. Like, all these pieces, like, this is like a college student sort of set, is like the galley set. It's nothing fancy, and it's impossible to tell me that there's anything in there that wouldn't be used if you actually tried to use them. Right? And if they're like on a super, super, super tight budget, like my absolute, in my mind, lowest minimum of what people should have, if it's really affordability sort of thing, is 5 pieces, like 5 knives. They should have 5 knives: a paring knife, a trimmer, a cheese knife, a chef's knife, and a carving knife. Probably a petite carver. And even if they don't go for that, right, in my mind, I'm just like, okay, well, anything is better than nothing, because even if they have a trimmer, or even if they have like 2 or 3 pieces or whatever, they're going to use them and love them every day, and they're going to be substantially better off than if they had a whole set of whatever else. So, like, there's all these different, like, blocks in my mind of, like, there's these different markers in my mind of, like, here's what they should have, here's what they should have, here's what they should have, but I need to preface it based on what they're telling me, right? So I have to meet them. No matter what it is they're telling me, figure out their situation, I have to meet them for where they're at right now. I can't just be thinking signature, 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 and they're telling me there's no way I'm going to get that today. I'm even signature, 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 because I lose the customer. Like, I'm not listening. It's idiotic. Or even if they end up, even if I were to pressure them into getting it, like, they might send it back. Like, that's, you know, so, I mean, you know what I mean. So, and here's a question I always ask myself, which is, how much Cutco do I think it's ridiculous for a customer to have less than? How much Cutco do I think it's ridiculous for a customer to have less than? So you think about that question, picture in your mind, like, how much Cutco is ridiculous for them to have less than? Like, even assign, like, a dollar figure to that amount, or how many pieces they should have, or what set it is, hopefully. Even if that's not you, that's fine, because that wasn't me for a long time. But whatever that number is probably your average order. The amount of Cutco that you think is ridiculous for them to have less than is probably your average order. In most cases. Right? It's the same thing, even if it's on a piece. I think it's ridiculous if this customer doesn't buy a cheese knife from me right now. They're probably going to buy a cheese knife from me right now. Right? Because if you think it's ridiculous for them to have less than that, like, everything you say and how you act and what you do and what you look like is going to translate to that. And they can see that, and it makes sense. So your confidence level is most relatable at that point. Like, your highest level of confidence is right there. That's why that's your average order. Okay? So,
That was me. That's why I was like that for so long.
and then you think of this question, how much do I think a customer should own? How much do I think a customer should own?
A lot.
whatever number that comes out to, you try to double or triple that, and conceptualize that for just a moment. How much Cutco I think? Because when I started, I was like, well, everyone should have a homemaker, or everyone should have a galley. Was like my mind, and then it's like try to double or triple it, and I'm like, oh my god. Or even now, it's like I think every customer should own a signature and like a small set of cookware, and it's like double or triple it. I'm like, oh god, it's like Cutco kitchens for everybody. Yeah, everybody should own that. Like, and I know in my mind it's true. Like, I just have to get myself to the point where that's happening. So, like, Matt Graves and Seth Kenzer and, like, all those guys, like, that's kind of where their head is at right now. And that's why Seth just popped off, like, 2 50K plus weeks. Yeah. Crazy.
Get 50 grand in 2 weeks.
That's right. No, like, 50 each. 50 each week.
Yeah, but, like, he actually made 50 grand.
That's right. So if you can get yourself to the point where you think of your orders and your belief system in that sort of way, it's like, I mean, what do you think that does to your sales? Right? That's how people get $1,000 average orders. That's all. I mean, that's what there is to it. And obviously it has to do with, you know, who you're seeing is part of it, but still, like, the vast majority of us are selling to, like, average middle-class homeowners. It's not a matter of can they afford it or whatever. Of course they can. It's just a matter of where they put their money and what they value the most. Which, having American-made stuff forever, never having to replace it, is a pretty sweet gig. You know, if they can swing the whatever $2,000 a month it is for the kitchen. Some people can do it. Some people can't. But it's worth it if they can. So, yeah, last thing I put on here was basically say stuff to yourself over and over and over again. Like, literally out loud. That's right. That's exactly what it is. Like, say stuff to yourself over and over and over again. And what it does is it solidifies your internal sort of beliefs and, like, subconscious to the point where it becomes a part of you, and then, you know, you're at the point where you're not even recognizable in the business, or even, you know, on a personal level. So every single year, it'd be hard to tell the difference between myself this year and last year and the previous year. And it's because of, like, what I tell myself, and, you know, kind of it's like this sort of never-ending, like, improvement of oneself is what you're telling yourself. Because if you say it out loud enough, you're going to believe it. And when you believe it, it becomes a part of you. And when it becomes a part of you, you're a different person. So.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
What would be the best Vector Connect talk I could listen to? What's selling in the kitchen? I'm doing a demo for some. I asked for a recommendation. Like, that was my first time ever trying it. Asking because, like, the people I saw, their neighbors had, like, just ridiculous mansion.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, hey, do you know your neighbors? The one with, like, the super cool house across the street. And they're like, yeah, they're some of my best friends. And I was like, oh, that'd be awesome if I could do a presentation for them at the end. And then they gave them as a recommendation, sent out the text. They said yes while I was there, booked up an appointment.
Yeah.
Never seen Cutco before, never heard anything about it. So, like, I want to learn, like, a talk. I mean, I want to, like, listen to, like, a perfect talk right before I go on to that.
Matt Graves. Anything by Matt Graves.
Matt Graves. Yep. Is he still sell?
San Diego.
Which one do you think, though? I've literally only watched, like, 3 or 4 Vector Connect talks. They're the only ones that he sent me.
Yeah, to be honest, you might want to just do some digging around.
Okay.
Because I know he's put out a lot of content recently, so I wouldn't be able to probably refer you to the right one.
Okay.
But honestly, a lot of it just comes down to how you talk about it.
Yeah.
So before, like, once I sort of, like, price condition it, whatever, like, I'll just mention the idea of it and show them. It's like, hey, and just so you know, like, this, just so you know about it, is our Cutco kitchen. And this is what all of our customers over a lifetime tend to work up to. So, like, can you imagine what it'd be like if you never had to, like, go to the store for, like, a spoon or fork or knife or pot or pan or kitchen accessory ever again? Yeah. And they're, like, thinking about it, right? Okay, so that's why a lot of customers have this goal, is so that they'll never, ever have to go back to the store again. They'll forever have American-made stuff. It'll last them forever. And this is what our Cutco kitchen looks like. And as you can see, like, I mean, it's $10 grand. Like, it's expensive. But like this is like the best sale that we run on Cutco, because when you get it all at once and you just kind of bang it out, if you can swing it, like you never have to get kitchen stuff ever again. What the point of this is, just so you know, is not like to sell everyone Cutco kitchens. It's to get the person in the kitchen who like is in that frame of mind, or like the right type of person in the right scenario, and for them to say yes. But most importantly, what it does for most people is they're like, oh my god, like, is they look at how expensive it is, and they're like, oh my gosh. So when you're like, okay, and just so you know, like the set that you're looking at right now, it's only 19. Oh,
Yeah, like, damn, I thought I was spending 10 grand.
that's right. Like, because when they're thinking about it, and it's like, oh my god, like if you condition it the right way, and they're like, well, your perfect set is only $383 or whatever it is on a 5-pay, and they're like, oh, okay, like, and whether or not they get it, which in a lot of cases it makes it easy for them to say yes to when you condition them at $2,000 a month. But it just changes the perspective and everything, and even if no matter what they start with, they're already conditioned to think, I'm gonna keep building this thing forever.
Okay.
Other questions? I don't know what time we're gonna run to here, but
Other questions I have.
What affirmation do you say to yourself specifically each day?
lots. What, like relating to Cutco or what?
Related to Cutco, like what affirmation did you say to get to that belief where everybody should own a signature or higher?
That didn't come from affirmations. That came from using the knives.
True.
That is true.
That is true. I literally used the
Yeah.
knives I cook on my own.
That
I'm
yeah,
like,
that
when I
that
tried
part
to-
came from just using the knives and being around the business a long time.
Yeah.
That wasn't through affirmations.
Mhm.
My show results, that comes from affirmations of like I'm gonna write up this many orders today. I'm gonna talk to this many people. I'm gonna close on this many people. Those types of things for me came from affirmations. That was one that didn't.
Gotcha.
So my affirmations come from like how I structure my affirmations and how many of them I say is completely structured around what do I want right now.
Okay.
Like, what do I want to have happen? Yeah. Questions? How to sell more Cutco? Why, like, if you have questions on why am I not selling more Cutco? Like, what is it? Because those are good questions to be asking, too. Because, like, I myself have those questions. Like, why am I not selling more Cutco?
I had a really good question in my head. I went and grabbed my phone and looked at GroupMe and then I forgot it. Freaking GroupMe.
So for me, what I found is that when I wasn't selling enough in the biz, or I wasn't happy with where I was at right now,
Yeah.
sometimes what that indicated for me is that I needed to sort of branch out and look at other facets of the business. So, as in when I started getting to the point where I was like in a rut between, okay, I like selling, it's cool, but like I'm not sort of in the selling mode right now. Like, what that meant to me was, okay, maybe I should try my hand at branching. Or when it came to branching, I was like, okay, well, I'm good on branching. I had 2 summers. Like, maybe I should, at the end of my second branch, I'm like, maybe I should just dust off the sample kit and start selling again. And I did that. I'm just like, okay, well, maybe I should learn how to do just like a really kick-ass service call. And then I did that and sold like $50,000 on service calls or something like that. And then at the end of last summer, I was like, okay, well, done a lot of service calls, done a lot of demos, like doing that. Like, maybe I should try my hand at fairs and shows. And now I'm at fairs and shows. Now that I'm doing fairs and shows, now I'm starting to think, okay, I should be taking more service call leads at these fairs and shows, because these would be quality people and they'd add to my weeks every week. I should be taking more service call leads. So now I'm started doing that. Like, if you ever find yourself in a rut with Cutco or like where you're at right now, it's like what I found is just like find something else you can do with it that either supplements it or just like takes you on a different course for a little bit. Because in every one of the experiences I've had with Cutco, it's been a positive one and it's helped me immensely. So when I found it's like, okay, sales is getting whatever, I should try something else. I tried something else. I'm like, okay, great, this is awesome. And then once that's got a little old, it's like, okay, like you can get little tastes of things and kind of figure out where you sit. Because for me right now, like, and where I kind of want to be, it's like I'm going to be doing mostly fairs and shows. I'm going to be taking service call leads, and that's going to be the extent of probably my career with Cutco. Is doing, qualified leads from service calls from fairs and shows, and doing my fairs and shows, and that'll be one job. My other job will be teaching piano privately, like for gifted students, charging healthy rates, and like doing both of those businesses and really kind of staying independent. So you just kind of figure it out. But the only way to kind of do is by getting little tastes of what everything is kind of like. Because if you don't, it'll always just be kind of what if. It's same thing with this job. I mean, when you took it, you're just like, I have no idea how I'm going to do with this thing. And if you're like most people, like I had no idea. And then you end up, doing pretty well. And you're like, okay, it's pretty cool. Right? So you just never know until you're, in the moment and you actually give it a legitimate shot. Because if you don't, it's like, you just never know, and in most cases, you end up never knowing. I mean, I know, even some of my best buddies are like, running around trying to still figure out what they're doing.
Yep.
And they're in relatively good places for like, in comparison to most people, but they're still trying to figure out like what is the meaning of all this, and what do I want to do right now, which is like one of the hardest questions to answer, I think, and it changes over time, but it's a question that everyone asks themselves multiple times. But I think as long as you continue to like open yourself up to opportunity and continue getting tastes of different things, especially with this business, I think it ends up in every situation being a good situation. I mean, one of my guys ran a branch this summer, and when I met him, he was just like, this was like the most unlikely dude to run a branch, I think, when I first met this kid. Like, I had a hard time getting him to make 5 phone calls.
Oh.
And like on the first day of training, I was just like, so how many calls have you guys? After like 20 minutes, he's like, 4. I'm like, how much did you say you wanted to sell for your fast start? And I like did the math with him, like went super banker because he's like also a banker. I'm like, okay, so you made 4 calls in 20 minutes, which translates to 12 calls an hour, which translates to this many appointments per hour, which means you're going to sell this for the push, or sell this for your fast start. Would you be excited if you sold that? And he's like, that kind of sucks. I'm like, well, it doesn't, but if you wouldn't be excited about it, you wouldn't be excited about it. So you want to see how many calls per hour it would take to get you there? I was like, yeah, sure. And then that hour, he ended up making 25 phone calls because he understood, like, this is what it takes, And this kid, he ran a branch. It didn't go super well. He learned just a ton, right? And, like, moving forward, he thinks he can do anything now. And this was a kid who also struggled with his health, too. Right, like had a hard time working, even 5-hour days, and he ran a branch. Right, like Jason's laughing because it's like branches are all day, every day, like to the grindstone. No amount of work scares this kid anymore, and like it's just one of those things. It's like no matter what it is, if you put your heart into it, it's never a failure. It's never a failure. Even if it doesn't go the way you want it to, and I have to remind myself of it every single day, and no matter who it is, even Jason, like we have to remind ourselves, no matter what it is, or how not good it seems, it's a learning experience, and it's just another day in the journey of each and every person's life. So, yeah, I mean, it's easy for me to look at my summer and be like, here's what should have gone better, and here's what went horribly, and blah, 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 but it happens to everybody, and everybody's journey in life is different, with different ups and downs, different rewards, different setbacks. So
now these 2 guys are going to branch this summer. That's
awesome.
Their hopes. They're both local, going to be assistants throughout the school year. So what's a couple tips for them preparing to branch, run a successful branch since you won the company trip twice?
From branches?
Yep.
What did your branches sell?
My first did about 135. My second did about 105, but I sold enough for the kicker. Yeah.
There you go.
Yes.
Okay, so advice.
Yeah, like a couple tips. Obviously, sell more, get more withholdings, and all that. But how should they just mentally be preparing and do now, even though there's a lot to do, but there's also it's like far away for them. Oh, I got 8 months. Like what are some tips to help them
hit the company trip?
If I've noticed anything over my 6 years working with Cutco and just with people in general, it's almost unanimous that anybody who knows me would agree that I hold myself to a significantly higher standard than most anybody else.
Yep.
And that's why I end up winning. That's why it ends up going well for me. That's why I do well at Cutco. It's why I do well on piano. It's why I do well at anything. At the same time, there are drawbacks to when you hold yourself to those high standards, right? Like, I go through moments of, a lot more self-doubt than other people, and it's not because I should be. It's because I hold myself to such a high standard. It makes it that much harder to keep up with it. But when it comes to running a really solid branch, it has everything to do with that. It has everything to do with that. I look around and I ask Dane, like, when things aren't going well for whatever, and I'm just like, why hasn't this person done this? It's on a checklist. You even gave a checklist this year of not, like, what you need to do to prepare for a branch. How is it possible that this person hasn't done it? And Dane's just like, because most people don't have those standards. You have those standards. Like, if you got a checklist and you know you need to do it, you're going to end up getting it done. Most people don't do that. That's the difference between running a great branch. And it has nothing to do with running the branch itself. It has everything to do with, like, your preparation into going into it. Like, running the branch is one thing, and it's like 10 to 20% of the game. Like, basically just kind of eating the shitstorm that's coming at you is a branch, because it's hard, and, like, all this stuff comes up all the time, especially when you're working with a ton of people. But it's preparing for it that's everything else. It's your mindset going into it and being able to kind of keep that going through no matter kind of what's going on. Because whatever it is, like, if you realize that you have it better off than the next person, you're going to end up winning. Because in any other business, for the most part, it's not $5,000 in startup just as a safety cushion. It's $500,000 to get your thing running, and maybe, hopefully, dear God, break even this year. Right? So, like, you're not leveraged by $500,000. You're leveraged by, like, 3 months of your time for a kick-ass experience that's going to be great no matter how your branch ends up doing. But if you want it to go well and you want it to be the best experience possible, it has everything to do with your standards. Like, 100%. There's nothing to do with anything else. It's what do you demand from yourself? And if it's not a whole lot, then your branch isn't going to do as well as the person who's more like me, who has to have everything done. Like, look at the people who, had really solid summers this year. I can think of all those people, and I'm like, all those people are just, they're badasses. Like, all those people are just like, I need to do this. I have to do this. It's not an option. I went to Net Meeting, and I listened to Jason Jeffrey talk about how he ran an Ironman without having run a marathon. Never ran a marathon, and I think he did an Ironman in 11 hours or something like that. 11. And Josh Mueller, like, another CSP, like, they both sell $500,000 a year type people. And Josh was telling me about a conversation he had with Jason, and he goes, Jason just says, here's my training program. I'm going to do it every single day at, such and such time in the morning. And it's going to be every single day no matter what. And Josh was like, I told him, okay, so if you miss a day, here's what you need. And Jason's just like, hold on. I am not going to miss a day. Like, he interrupts me, he goes, I'm not missing a day. And Josh was like, I stood there, I was like, okay. Like, he's just, he already had it made up in his mind. Like, no matter what, like, I could have a headache, I could be sick, I could whatever, I am not missing a day. Like, period. That, in my mind, like, everyone was in the room, like, all these, a lot of us selling lots and lots of Cutco and already, like, hold ourselves, to high standards, apparently. And then here's Jason, like, I'm not missing a day. Like, period. Like, this intense workout regimen. Like,
Yeah.
crazy stuff. Just, I am not missing a day. And, like, that was just ingrained in my brain. Just, like, that sort of commitment. That's the winning formula.
The more demos you guys do, the more interviews you do, the more trainings you do, the more crap you deal with, which prepares you for the storm and gets you more confident.
We had some good preparation for the storm last Saturday. We had some good preparation.
The storm woke me up this morning.
Yeah, the actual.
Did you hear that thunder? There was like one bolt like that happened at like 2 a.m. or something.
I love
What was
this
that?
That's great too.
You see more questions for Evan? He's got stuff to do today. He's a busy man. He blesses with his presence.
How did you get really good at selling cookware and flatware, or are you still not good at selling cookware and flatware?
Surprisingly, I'm better at selling flatware than cookware. Had everything to do with just immersing myself into how to sell it. That's
so
it.
like,
What a stud.
I'm just gonna ask you to get into it.